Hello, and welcome back to the Animal Communicator and Healer Summit. This is the place for aspiring and established animal communicators and healers to come together to connect with animals, to connect with their abilities, and to connect with each other. This is a huge part of what we're up to here. I'm your host, Dr. Kara Gubbins, founder of the Animal Wisdom Circle and founder of How to Talk to Your Pet, the proven 4-step system that teaches everyone to talk to their pets or any animal. Today, I'm super honored to have Kathleen Prasad with us, and we're going to be talking about Reiki for rescued animals and probably going into shelters and all kinds of really good stuff. Kathleen is the founder of Animal Reiki Source and president of the Shelter Animal Reiki Association. A Reiki practitioner for over 20 years, Kathleen Prasad teaches and shares the healing benefits of Reiki meditation for animals and their caregivers. Kathleen has created the Let the Animals Lead method of animal Reiki based on the traditional Japanese Reiki techniques and thousands of hours of animal Reiki experience in the field. This method represents the world's first specialized, extensive, and professional, professional curriculum, sorry, Kathleen, in animal Reiki and meditating with animals for healing. And for more information, you can visit her at animalreikisource.com or shelteranimalreikiassociation.org. And I will try not to mess up any more words today, but welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here and part of such a beautiful group that you have speaking through this summit. So thank you for having me.
No, it's totally my pleasure. And I can't stop smiling because I was telling you before we started, and I'll let everybody else know, Kathleen's one of my heroes. I've been doing Reiki since 1993, and I found her books very soon after that. I'm not sure, when were they published? When was your first book published, Kathleen?
The first book, Animal Reiki, was, I think, 2006.
So I think I found it right around then because I started doing Reiki on people and then, of course, included animals when I got animals. And I've been a fan of your books and recommending those for years. They're on my shelf behind me. These are my special books that are always with me.
It's the purple and yellow one behind you. I see that.
On the top shelf.
Yes, I see
right
it.
Next to the mother and baby whale. It's a special place. I'm a book person, and I have bookshelves in literally every room in my house. So this book area these are my special books. And so Kathleen has a prominent place there. So I'm super excited for you to be here.
Thank you.
So let's start, Kathleen, with your story of how you became an animal Reiki healer.
Sure. Well, actually, it's funny. It's like accidental and not intended. I would say that, first of all.
That's a double whammy.
It was just really, I think, my purpose that I didn't know and that the universe had to reveal. And because I'm many things, I am an animal lover for my whole life. I am an empath for my whole life, so having suffered from anxiety since I was a child. I'm also a super skeptic, so I'm not that trusting of people, probably because of my empathic nature, partly. But always, animals have been my best friends. They have been stood next to me and helped me through, really dark times, and also made me experience joy more deeply in really good times. So perhaps for all those reasons, the only way I think that I would have become a Reiki teacher is through animals, because I think my husband kind of sometimes says that I am an animal. I'm not a human. So I just, the way I experience the world and the way that I sense other beings is sometimes I feel a little bit out of place among humans, although I think I've carved out this special world where I'm surrounded by all these animal lovers because I'm teaching all these animal lovers all the time. So now it's like, I always say that I get to travel the world to meet the best people on earth. And I really believe that. But I began really as a teacher. So I went to school and studied history and wanted to be a history teacher. And I found I taught in public schools in San Francisco, and I found very quickly that I had a way with troubled students and at-risk students, so that the kids that no one could deal with, and I taught 6th, 7th, 8th grade, those kids that nobody else could deal with, they're like, oh, give them to Kathleen, give them to Kathleen. And so I just had this way, and I'll tell you, you know what my secret was? I connected with them through animals. And so if they, I had pictures of my dog on the wall, and I would talk about, my animals growing up, and I would ask them about their animals. And if we were studying something, I would say, let's find out what about animals in this time and place. Or if we're writing a poem, pretend that you're your dog for a day, write a poem from that perspective. So animals really, early on, I discovered it was a way to reach kids that wouldn't otherwise do anything. And I got them out in the community. I mean, kids who were cutting class and not involved, I got them to go out and volunteer and like clean cat cages at the local animal shelter, and, videotape what they're doing and come back and present that they did this community service. I mean, it was really incredible, the healing power of animals. It was inspirational. And I knew it for myself, but I had never seen it for others in such a strong way, except working with these kids. So that every part of my life led me towards this. I initially learned Reiki because my mother-in-law had asked me to get a treatment, because she got a treatment and had healed her of this ailment that she was going to have to go in and have surgery for some complication, and of a previous surgery. And she got Reiki from a coworker, and everything healed, and she didn't have to go for her second surgery. And so the doctor was like, this is a miracle. I don't know, but it just healed itself. And so she said, oh, Kathleen, you have to go. It's so great. And I was like, okay, sounds kind of weird, but when it's your mother-in-law, what can you do? You have to kind of humor them, right? So I went, and I'll never forget that first treatment. And I was about, 29 at the time. And I had suffered from severe panic attacks and anxiety since I was about 3 or 4. And it was just a part of my life. And I kind of made my world smaller to deal with it. And my husband was very supportive and patient with me, and he understood this was just part of who I was. And so I went for this Reiki treatment, and about 5 minutes into the treatment, I got so relaxed. And of course, I went into the treatment like this, as usual, like I went into everything new. And I felt so relaxed, and I heard this voice inside of me, and it was my voice. All is well.
Wow.
Now, I hadn't heard that voice since maybe ever. What I always heard was, oh my God, something terrible. I always heard the anxious voice. And I heard that, and it was me. And I felt it. Everything's okay. And so I kind of fell into a deep trance-like sleep for the hour-long session. But when I came out and I left, I still remember walking down the steps outside of the treatment center. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the key. This is going to heal me. And I truly had thought I would never be healed of that. And so that started my journey, that I have to learn this. And once I learned it, I practiced it all the time because I was anxious all the time. And my dog came and practiced with me. He came and laid on top of my feet. And this is a dog that always stayed 5 to 7 feet away. He was a shepherd. He followed me everywhere at my ankle, but he liked his space. Mm-hmm. When I was doing Reiki for myself, he wanted on top of me.
Wow.
Very uncharacteristic. And so that was that experience, and it was Dakota, and he's our mascot. He's passed away now for 10 years, but we dedicated the Shelter Animal Reiki Association his memory because he was a rescue, and he was my greatest Reiki teacher. Mm. And what he showed me was, animals love Reiki too. I mean, it makes animals feel like everything's good, just a strong sense of well-being, just like us. But B, I hadn't offered it to him. I hadn't thought to go over there and see what happens. I was just in my own space, and he was able to utilize that for himself without me even really being a part of it. You know, I was doing my own thing, and he's like, okay, I'm just going to go take part in this. And that amazed me, because humans aren't like that. You know, we need that intention, like, oh, can you give me a Reiki treatment? Animals just seem to soak up the radiance of it. Super
Wow.
sensitive. And so that started me on the journey of sharing Reiki with every animal that I could. I was sponsoring a horse at the time, and all the horses at the barn. I was volunteering at a dog shelter, or actually they had dogs and cats, animal shelter in San Francisco at the time, 2 days a week, walking dogs. And I asked them, can I try this? I just learned this new thing and it's really cool. And they're like, well, it sounds kind of weird, but it can't hurt, can it? I'm like, no, it can't hurt. So that they're like, okay. So it just sort of unfolded. And what I learned over the years was that animals are so sensitive, and we have to modify the way that we practice Reiki with animals to suit their sensitivities. And also that animals are very wise about healing. And so we have to realize that, because I feel as a human being, I'm not very wise. Sometimes I know what's wrong with me, but often I don't know. So even with that, Reiki works, of course, whether you don't need to know. But I think with understanding with animals that wisdom, and also that you get so much in return from them. So all these shelter animals were teaching me every day, were making me a better person by the lessons that they taught me, and just by sharing their space, giving me so much joy. And a lot of people thought shelters were a depressing place to be. And I found with Reiki, shelters became a healing place.
Mm.
And animals who were shut down, the light came back on in a Reiki session. Animals who wouldn't come near anyone would come crawl in my lap during a Reiki session. Animals who had been there for months, no one looking at them, they would get adopted the next day or even an hour later after a Reiki session. Animals who were ready to pass away, sometimes they would pass with peace, but sometimes they would wake up and have a new lease on life, and we couldn't explain it. All these things happening, really, although I practiced a lot with animals of my friends and animals at the barn, but in the early years, it was really hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rescued animals, where I really learned something important from each and every one of them. So at that time when I learned Reiki, it was just human Reiki. And then there was an aside. People would say, oh yeah, you can do it to animals and plants and trees and whatever, it's fine. But there was no like animal Reiki per se. And I just think it's so weird when I think about my journey and how this is what I do. And I've, really created this whole method that didn't exist. And I couldn't have done it without the animals really showing me the way. And also Reiki healing me of my anxiety. It took several years, but I'm no longer an anxious person. And what a blessing. I mean, I never thought I would be able to say that. And now I fly all over the world to teach this. I used to be afraid to get on a plane to go for an hour to Los Angeles. I'd be like, for days, I'd be nervous about it. Now I'm just like, oh yeah, okay, we're going to Europe. Great. Wherever we're going, let's go. So just the transformation in my life, I feel so grateful to be doing what I'm doing. I feel so blessed, and I feel so humbled when I see those beautiful healing responses of animals.
Amazing story. It's like you rescued yourself and you rescued the animals and the animals rescued you, and it's just like so beautiful and so much synergy there. It's really a beautiful story. Thank you. For viewers who haven't heard of Reiki before and don't know what it is, can you give a brief explanation of what it is and how it works?
Sure. So Reiki comes from two Japanese words, rei and ki. And ki is like chi. People have probably heard of that, which is, energy. Rei is spirit. So we could say the meaning is something like a spiritual energy, or one of the ways I like to think of it as like your inner essence. So like if I look in the mirror, this is a description I always like to say to people. So if you look in the mirror when you're 5, when you're 15, when you're 50, and when you're 90, you always look different, right? But it's still you. Because who you are isn't really this outer shell, right? Who you are is something you can't really put your finger on, but you know it's there, right? It's that inner spirit or heart. It's your heart, it's your soul, it's your essence. Whatever that, you know, we can't touch it or put it in a box, but we know it's there, that true essence of you. That's really the word Reiki. That's what it's describing, Reiki. The system of Reiki is a Japanese spiritual practice that has therapeutic applications. And Reiki has been tested by the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, and it has been shown in peer-reviewed scientific studies that it activates the parasympathetic response, that it induces deep relaxation, that it can reduce depression in people. Also, it has been tested unethically on animals, where they induce stress on rats. And then they show that Reiki relieves that stress and induces a deep relaxation. I'm totally against those studies, but I'm just saying we have them. So there have been a lot of claims about what Reiki can do and what it is, but at least we can start there. Science understands at least something about it. We don't understand how it works, the mechanism behind it, but somehow practicing this system creates this deep sense of well-being. And I go back to my first little voice in my very first treatment, all is well. It just creates that sense. And when we have that sense of well-being, guess what happens? We heal ourselves. Yeah, all levels, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. If you're in that space, your body is a healing machine. Your body knows how to heal. Why can't we heal? Because, you know, we're stressed. We have, some kind of disease process going on. Our cells are stressed. So when we induce this space, it's ideal for us to heal on all levels. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what does healing really mean? Because we often think of it that it means curing a physical illness. And people think Reiki can cure anything. And how I see it is I go back to that idea of looking in the mirror and seeing yourself. Who this outer shell isn't really me. That inner essence is the real healing that takes place, the healing of your spirit. So sometimes when you heal your spirit, it ripples out into your physical, your emotional, your mental thoughts, like for me and my anxiety. But sometimes it's your time to pass. And that's okay, because your spirit can still receive healing even in the transition. And so another gift and what I see the purpose of what we're doing with Reiki is to be able to see as a practitioner, when we are constantly cultivating that inner essence, that inner light, that we can see it in ourselves and remember it. But then we can also look at an animal and we can see it in the animal. We can see it even if they're struggling, they have been abused, and we can see the marks on their body. They're facing some kind of terrible trauma or a disease, a chronic disease, or maybe they're going to pass away. As human beings, we'll often just look with our eyes and see the surface and go, oh my God, they're suffering. But Reiki teaches you to look with your heart so we can see that even in this moment, when the physical, mental, emotional may be suffering, but that beautiful light inside is still perfect. So to be able to see that beautiful essence in the midst of a suffering situation is incredibly healing for an animal or for a person, really. So I really see that when there are many practices in the system of Reiki, we have, certain meditations we learn, certain symbols and mantras that we use for meditation. For humans, we learn hands-on positions that we use for healing, but all of them are really cultivating that sort of coming home to your true self, coming home to or awakening to that realization that you are the light, you are the universe, and all is well. So it's really, in essence, we often think of it as a hands-on healing modality, but it's so much bigger than that. It's really, it is a spiritual practice for cultivating compassion and balance and harmony and all these beautiful things. And so it helps animals, but it helps us, and it helps the bond between us, and it even ripples into everything that you do. I mean, it heals your life, really.
I'm hooked. I'm sold. I'm going to buy whatever you're selling. Hello. I really love everything you're saying, and I'm just sitting here on the other side of the computer screen, nodding and smiling and going, yes, 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 I agree with all of this. And it's so wonderful to have somebody put it together so eloquently and so simply, so straightforward, and yet it is kind of this complex system. And it is very inspiring to hear. And one of the things that I'm hearing is that Reiki allows us to come home to ourselves, where all true healing comes from. And I loved what you said about the ripples healing out to the physical or out to those other levels. And so in a sense, doing a Reiki treatment, say for an animal in a shelter, is you're giving them that little like jolt of coming home, and then maybe you leave for a week, and then you give them another little jolt of coming home. And in that process, it gets easier and easier to come home, and easier and easier to maintain that. And the more you have that, the more you sustain that truth in your being. And what naturally happens is healing on all of these levels. Would that be a good summary?
Absolutely. And, you know, the other thing that's really powerful for animals is that we can see them, like them, we can see them. So in a way, when we shine our light, we are mirroring back their light to them so that they can remember, because they've maybe forgotten it because of all the stress they've been through, and people mean well, but a lot of people focus on what's wrong. And we're focusing on what's right in this moment. And so that's why one of the beautiful things about Reiki for animals and people really is its simplicity. You don't have to know what's wrong. You don't diagnose, and you're not sending energy to this and that problem. So you don't have to think, okay, which Reiki tool do I need to use because they have, a liver toxicity, or, oh, they have a broken bone, so which Reiki tool should I use? It's not at all how it works. The approach is always the same. The methods are always the same. Basically, the way I look at it as I go inward to my true self, my inner essence, that beautiful light. And through the practice, whether it's a breathing practice I choose, or focusing on one of the symbols or mantras, or using hands-on healing for myself, or reciting the Reiki precepts, I am shining that light, remembering it, uncovering. I've covered it up, I'm uncovering it, I'm shining, I'm radiating, and it creates this beautiful space of all is well. And now the animals who are so sensitive, they're, in their space of suffering, they see it and they walk forward and step into the space. Sometimes physically walk forward. Sometimes their spirit walks forward and meets us in that light. And when we come together in that light, all species differences dissolve. Mm. And we are one together in that beautiful light. And in that light, nothing can exist but, harmony and compassion and love. It's like big love. It's not like love, like, oh, I love you. It's like love, like the love of the universe. It's all contained in this. And that, for me, is the ultimate healer. Love. Love heals all. Compassion. Compassion heals all. There's no greater healer. So when we say, oh, but I want to be able to put my hand and say, oh, let me put my hand on your broken bone. I heal your broken bone. But it's so much bigger. It's the healing at a universal level. It's awakening to that beautiful light inside and everything that comes from that. So, and you know, shelter animals specifically, I'm so grateful to them, and sanctuary animals as well, because you know, most people who start out with animal Reiki just have their own animals, and very often they're very loved, and they're in a home environment and everything, and they're familiar with you. So they give you a lot more like, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing, but you know, she means well. So, I mean, this is what my dog did, my horse did when I was kind of practicing, you know, what should I do? Put my hands on you? And my horse would be like, oh, she's doing that Reiki thing again. All right. But what's so great is when you work with a rescued animal, like, for example, we work with Sarah, Shelter Animal Reiki Association. We work with a lot of farmed animals who've been rescued and have gone through, at the farm industry, like horrendous conditions, horrendous abuse, because they're really seen as products, not as beings.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those animals, you can't even go in, or you can't even let them see you, because you're a human, and they'll immediately go into shock if they even see a person in the distance. This is how traumatized they've been. So in these organizations we're working with, they're like, you know, we don't know how to jumpstart this healing process. We have a vet, we have, you know, all these people that are willing to work with them, but we can't even go near them. Well, I can sit outside of their presence, and I can create that space of love and compassion without expectation, and not focusing on what's wrong with them, just being the light, and they can sense it. And many traumatized animals, it melts away the trauma, and it brings forth the light again. Animals who've been shut down from abuse or trauma, the light comes back on, and then they choose to come forward. So that Reiki has been able, through Shelter Animal Reiki Association, we've been able to work with many organizations where Reiki is stage 1 of healing. And of course it follows through all the stages, but when nothing else can be done, we can share Reiki. And in this gentle meditative space, there's no pushing anything on the animal. There's no re-traumatizing them, even by our presence. It's just like good stuff. And it's also many times the animals first experience that humans aren't all bad. In fact, humans can be very, very awesome. And so that in itself can kind of heal that human-animal relationship just through that presence. So the difference really between animals, working with animals, and Reiki has come so clear to me over these 20 years in working with these kinds of traumatized animals. We can't see Reiki as a hands-on healing modality where we put our hands on the place that hurts. Because that's how I do it for me. When I would have an anxiety attack, I'd put my hands on my heart. It feels really good. So then I thought, oh, that dog's having anxiety, and put my hands on his heart. And he's like, and he runs the other direction. What happened? That's what I like. Why didn't he like it? So it's taking a step back and just sitting in meditation, radiating that space, and then they go, yes, and then they come forward. So kind of making that switch in our mind, realizing it really has to be founded in meditation. And then the animals may choose to have physical touch, or they may not. They may move around, or they may lay down and sleep. I just got back from the Care Foundation in Florida, and it's an exotic animal rescue and sanctuary. And, you know, working with monkeys and bears and tigers and snakes and alligators, and even they have a crocodile. And these animals, the crocodile is always hiding, but if you sit outside his pen and you meditate, this Reiki meditation, and you invite him, many times he comes out from hiding and he stays right against the fence right next to you. Of course, we wouldn't want to go in, of course, but
right now,
have an animal like that come forward to connect. It just blows your mind, you know? And it's because it's so gentle, and it's so non-invasive, and it's just, again, like, it doesn't matter that you're a crocodile and I'm a human, because we're all the light. You're the light and I'm the light. And to be able to practice this every day with animals, like you said, I'm remembering my light. The animals is remembering, and we can hold on to that more easily because we're practicing.
Everything that you're saying, Kathleen, has an underlying implication maybe, or maybe an underlying foundation of honoring, respecting, and loving. And it comes through in all of that. Is that foundational for Reiki?
Absolutely. I mean, I think humility comes in for me, and that's about honoring the animals as who they are, which is much more sensitive energetically than us,
Mm-hmm.
much closer to the energy of the earth, and especially working with some of these species like crocodiles. I mean, talk about ancient earth energy. It's incredible. So really being humbled to even be in their presence, and realizing that, you know, if you accept me into your presence, it is an honor. And in the beginning, I went into this thinking my passion was rescued animals, and because I could see how it healed me of anxiety, it could heal them of their stress and trauma too. But what I've come to learn over these many years is that they have given me so much more than I could have ever given them. So that's a lot of what I teach now in my classes, is about being receptive to these gifts and this wisdom that animals bring to us when we connect, or when they choose to connect with us, and learning, how can I set up this situation so they want to connect with me? Because really it's totally their choice. And so there's a lot of things that we can do as human beings to make that experience more pleasant for animals so that they choose to connect. So yeah, and I definitely honoring, and also that love and compassion, that is what we're cultivating for healing. So it's much bigger than, oh, this energy heals that ailment. It's like this it's almost like hard to put into words. You know, sometimes I'd be sitting with a dog in a shelter, a dog who's been neglected, never known a kind touch. And I'll be sitting with them in that space, and it's me and the dog, and then we're sort of dissolving into that beautiful light. And then it's like, it's every dog that has been neglected, that is suffering. They're all sitting with us in this moment. And it's every person who loves animals, who is opening their heart to help animals. They're me. I'm them, all these animals. And so it's like you can feel, and it might sound a little woo-woo, but I can sometimes feel that healing of just that act of me setting my intention and opening that space for that dog, that it has this universal ripple. And so I really, to me, it's like Reiki for animals is about healing the bond and the dynamic and the relationship between animals and humans. It's so damaged on this earth. You know, it's so sad. But just, you know, one awakened heart at a time, we can heal it.
And this speaks so much to a way of being in the world rather than a doing of anything. So you're really cultivating that way of being with yourself first, that will ripple out, and then you can be with others and connect in a way that I'm in so many ways defies even putting words to it, that experience. So
Absolutely.
beautiful. Any final words, anything you want to share with our viewers about working with Reiki with animals, or with shelter animals in particular?
Well, I want to share with you guys that, Sarah, we just had our 10-year anniversary.
Yay.
We started out with like 12 members and like 3 organizations, and now we have 400 members, 75 organizations all around the world. And, you know, this approach of letting animals lead, and of just holding the space and learning how to cultivate compassionate presence, it is effective for any, I mean, no matter what the animal has been through, it can help them to heal from it. And so you never have, I guess my final word would really be, to never give up and always remember that beautiful light within. And whether it's a rescued animal you're working with, or even if it's your own animal that may have issues or may have, have an illness or something, if we can always remember that inner light and see with those eyes, that is one of the most healing things we can do for our animals, is learning to really see who they are, who they really are, and not getting so focused on, what's wrong. So that's just such a big lesson that these sheltered animals have taught me.
Beautiful. I love that vision of all of those people and organizations all over the world, just like this blanket of love for animals everywhere. So inspiring.
And we do so much more together, as you were saying, than we do alone. So, it's beautiful.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Let's go. Come on. Join in. Let's do this. We'll have a big party. Exactly. And Kathleen, I know that you have a free gift for people who want to get to be part of your community and connect with you and your work. You want to tell everybody about that?
So I've created this cute little graphic. It's like an 8.5 by 11 graphic, and has a picture of me with my dog Mystic on it, who's now passed away, but when she was a puppy. And it has 5 tips for sharing Reiki healing with animals. And so I talk about the 5 main things. If you want to sit with an animal in this space and share this space, these are the 5 things you want to remember. So if you go to the link that I know Kara's going to give you, and if you sign up, you have to sign up for my newsletter. I have a weekly newsletter. Then I will send you that beautiful graphic, and hopefully it can get you started and inspire you to connect with your animals for healing.
Perfect. And I'm thinking, because Kathleen, you have agreed to do a bonus interview, maybe we could go into a little bit of depth with those 5 things and give people a little bit more insight into those 5 tips. Talk about them a little bit. Does that sound good?
Totally. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So that's my segue into reminding you that you can get your All Access Pass. There's a button on this page to connect with Kathleen and to get those 5 tips from her. And there's another button on this page to sign up for your All Access Pass, which gives you lifetime access to this interview and all the interviews in the summit, plus all of the bonus interviews with all of these amazing and inspiring experts. So the price does go up once the summit ends. Now is the best time to get the best value. If you want to do that, go ahead and join us over there. Kathleen and I will be going deeper into the 5 tips for sharing Reiki with animals. Kathleen Prasad, one of my heroes, so great to meet you, and thank you so much for being here, a part of this summit and sharing everything.
I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you for having me.
And thank you everybody for being in our community here. We're so happy to be connected with all of you. Have a beautiful day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye everybody.